Right, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that I've got Jez with me tonight, and we're going to talk about what it was like being a football fan in the 1980s and 90s. So we're going to cover quite a lot of ground. So first thing I want to do is just introduce Jez and let him tell you about his channel, if that's all right. So over to you, Jez.
Yeah, thanks, Warren, having me on once again. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, we're going to have I think, good chat tonight on here. And maybe some of the people in the comments will put some of their experiences in. Yeah, my channel is basically Arsenal history and more. I originally started it to just really, it was going to be general Arsenal debate and the history. I've moved on a little bit from there, doing other stuff. I haven't, to be honest, done a lot of history stuff recently. I'm going to be doing it in the summer because there's not a lot else to talk about. I mean, the history stuff doesn't get great views, but I'm going to do it anyway. So as soon as I get my other Windows PC back, because at the weekend around here we had a lot of power cuts and it's knackered it. So I've got to take it in for repair, which I'm a bit pissed off about because it just won't boot up. So my local friendly PC man's going to have a look at it. So as soon as it's repaired, I'll be able to start doing it again. But yeah, all kinds of stuff Arsenal on my channel, a bit like everybody else. Reactions, match previews, all that. Usual old stuff. And yeah, looking forward to this show tonight, mate.
You did a brilliant quiz last night, Jez. I was listening to it today while I was working on the next instalment of my ongoing saga. I was loving it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Ken, man, is there nothing that man don't know? No. And Anthony Herbert missed out by 1 point. I mean, that's the first time Anthony's been on a quiz on my show anyway. And dear God, did he come out with some bloody brilliant answers. And all the guys actually did really well. And it was quite a tough quiz. Some of them questions.
It was. So there was a lot of those questions. I reckon I would have come near the bottom if I'd been on it.
Well, I won't lie.
Man, he knows his stuff, doesn't he?
Oh my days, does he know his stuff? He's relentless.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I did that quiz, right, I was Googling it, and the wife was typing it out, and I wasn't looking at the answers, right? So I said, right, you asked me the questions, and she went through it. I scored 72 points.
Wow.
Which I thought I was quite happy with that. But when you look at Kenny and Anthony getting 132 and 131 respectively, I'm thinking, Christ almighty. And TJ did well. Connor's the youngest there. And Kyle sadly missed the start, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But Kenny's got his crown back, so he's happy. And I'll probably do another one just at the start of the football season, which will be an all Arsenal one. So that'd be fun. They're all about fun.
Yeah,
that's all it's about.
No, exactly. It was great, mate. It was great. So I'm just going to go through some of these comments before we get started. So I'll put a link in the chat right up the top. It's the pinned comment for Jez's channel. So all you need to do is just click on it and it will take you to his channel if you haven't subscribed to him already. And as you can see, he's got a brilliant channel and he does really good stuff on there. So make sure you go and subscribe to him. And then Arsenal Forever says, Warren and Jez, big up. Nice to see you, Arsenal Forever. Thanks very much for coming in. It's great to see you. And Early Doors Football TV. Evening, Warren and Jez. Hope you've had a reasonable day. Yeah, I've had a all right day, mate. Nice to see you. Yeah, he's just started his channel, Jez. He's
yeah, I've subscribed.
it was regular on Diesel and Terry's channel when they were going. So yeah, he's a good lad.
Yeah.
And he says, big up Arsenal forever. Carnage AFC 84 says, big up Warren, Jez, and the Chatsky. Nice to see you, Carnage. I hope you're well, mate. And Gavin O'Flaherty Cove Gooner says, crack Warren and Jez, should be a good show. Yeah, we're looking forward to it, mate. We really are. And Early Doors says, big up Carnage. And Gavin Flaherty. And Carnage says, early doors. And Del Boy Gunner is in the chat as well. Says, what's the bleeding story? Warren, Jez, and Legends in the chat. I'm over in France getting deals done for the Arsenal because they're doing clown garlic head cards.
Good old Del Boy.
Yeah, fair play to you, mate. And don't overpay for anything, though, mate.
No. He'll be right. He'll do the job.
Yeah. Carnage AFC 84 says, Del Boy, how you doing? And Gavin O'Flaherty says, crack early doors. I hope you're doing well, bud. And Gavin says, oh no, Del Boy's here. And Carnage says, oh, go on, Del. And Early Doors says, Del Boy Gunner TV, big up, you legend. And I'm doing well, thanks, Gavin, says Early Doors. And was a good quiz, Jez, says Early Doors. I think Kenny cheated. It was a close quiz, that's for sure. It was a close quiz, but the Early Doors, Kenny's football knowledge is off the scale. It's just incredible. What that man don't know, it ain't worth knowing, isn't it, Jez?
Yeah, he actually won it on one question where he got all three parts. It was the date that Pep Guardiola signed for Man City, 1st of July 2016, because he got all parts of it, and Anthony only got 2 parts. So that's where it tipped.
It's just unbelievable. Who knows that information? I wouldn't have even got the year right, let alone the rest of it.
It's quite easy because 1st of July invariably is the day of the start of pre-season training.
Right.
If you go back in history, a lot of new managers that are coming in are signed on that day.
Oh, okay.
That's when they're announced, 1st of July, 20 whatever year. And so, and Kenny brought that up in his explanation, saying, "Well, it's quite a common factor that happens at clubs." So,
because I heard him talking about Ange, saying that when he'll be declared as Tottenham manager from the 1st of July, even though he's there working at the moment.
That tends to happen. It's invariably the day that players go back for their pre-season and getting ready for their season tour or whatever, all that. And it's happened loads of times that players get Mourinho got announced when he first went to Chelsea on the 1st of July.
No, I didn't know that. That's interesting. But it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's because all the deals have been done in the background, and then the club come out and say, "This is our new manager." And he goes and meets the players, and it's all out on Sky and the websites and crap like that. So he snuck it on that one question.
So Steve RFC's in the chat as well. He's another good lad. Big up and good to see Hex on. I don't know what he means by that, but still. I meant to see good to see Jez on. Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's good to see you, Steve. I hope you're good, mate. And he says, P.S. Thanks, Early Doors, and much appreciated, brother, says Carnage. And Steve says, big up, good to see Jez on. And you're welcome, Carnage, says Early Doors. And I miss season being finished by a good watching season back again, watching Lee Gunner, Jez and Kenny Ken. Yeah, I'm sure that when the season gets started again, they'll be doing their podcast again, which is absolutely superb. I love that podcast. It's brilliant. Early Doors says, I'm joking about Kenny Ken. He's a massive encyclopedia of Arsenal. Yeah, and football in general, mate. He's
unbelievable.
Big up, Jez and Warren, says Taib. Nice to see you, Taib. I hope you're well, mate. And hi, Tony. And Carnage says, Taib, how are you? Early Doors says, how are we doing, Taib? And Khan, I'm good, mate. How are you? Says Taib. And all good, Tony. How are you? And Kenny Ken is the Don Gargan when it comes to knowledge, as is Jez, says Carnage. That's very true.
I'm not even close. I'm not even close. No.
And Carnage says, Andrew, well, I don't think I'm close to those two, but I do try. And Early Doors says, I'm doing okay, Ty. Looking to do a stream later today. Well, that'd be good. I look forward to that, mate. And Steve says, I'm good. And birthday went well. Just went well. Just keyboard at times. I just take my time when I type. Yeah, that's probably the best way, mate, because if you have the same problem with me, it all gets a bit messed up. Carnage says, just out with the missus, so I probably shouldn't be watching, but feck it, my phone will die soon. And well, just watch as long as you want and you can, mate, without getting into trouble. And Ty says, a skunk sat on a stump and thunk, the stump stunk, but the stump thunk, the skunk stunk. Ty, man, I saw you do that one earlier. Anyway, so let's get into it. So most grounds, I'm going to talk about the grounds first of all. So most grounds, if not all in the UK, had at least 2 stands where solely terracing, i.e. standing only, had solely terracing, which was where people would be able to stand. And in these stands, it was easy for spectators to move around. So what I did, I put a picture in here of the North Bank, and it's empty. And as you can see, it would be pretty easy for someone just to move around in there and up and down, left and right and whatnot. And most stadiums in the lower down in the football pyramid you went, the worse that they were. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of them were death traps. Now, what I mean by that was that I remember going once to Doncaster Rovers and all the seating was wooden and there was very little space, like leg room and whatnot. And the actual floor of the stand was made out of wood. So all it would need was someone to drop a lit cigarette and the whole lot could have gone up, which was incidentally what happened at Bradford, wasn't it, Jez?
No, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible, terrible. I remember being at a game and it was coming out on the radio. And I remember there was like rumours going around about this massive tragic fire that was going on at Bradford. And I remember getting home and seeing it on the news and seeing people in there, they're like their hair on fire, where the asphalt tarmac roof was melting onto people. The classic one of the policeman who was dragging a couple of people out from in there, and his hair was on fire. I mean, it was horrendous.
It was horrendous.
And yeah, all because, as you quite rightly said, it was wooden terracing, seating type of thing, but there was no access underneath to clear out the crap. And it had built up for years and years and years, become so flammable. And yeah, one lit cigarette, somebody had smoked, put down, fell down through the boards. And that literally, that whole stand was like that after 20 minutes.
Yeah, it just went up really quickly, didn't it, Jez?
It was awful, awful, awful.
Yeah, it was. It was horrendous.
People trapped. People were trapped. Kids. Yeah. They'd shut the gates to at the back of the stand, and people were trying to get back there, and the police were trying to open the gates. They couldn't open the sodding gates because of the heat had expanded the gates, and they were jammed. And it was like quite horrendous, really. Those poor people burnt to death. I mean, it's just awful.
It was horrendous. I remember it. It was really, really bad. And you know, given the state of these stadiums, I'm surprised at the Hillsborough disaster. What happened there? It didn't happen sooner. And I think it was inevitable that something like that was going to happen, because it was like everything came together that day. It was like poor policing and poor organisation, and it just was an absolute disaster. It really was. And in my experience, there were a lot of the enclosures where away supporters were put into. But a lot of the time, if it was a big club like our club, like Arsenal, it would be horrifically overcrowded as well. I remember feeling like it was dangerously overcrowded on at least 2 or 3 different occasions when I was attending some grounds as a visiting supporter. I remember one incident at QPR. It was just, I just felt like I was going to start feeling like I was getting crushed. And also the dispersal of fans from these enclosures at the end of the game was really badly managed, in my opinion. And many fans, including myself, felt like we were being crushed because they were trying to get so many people all out at once. And sometimes fans would get crushed during the course of matches, because if it was in a terracing, you'd see like big surges of people like going forward towards the front of the terrace, and there'd be kids and women crushed up against the fence.
Yeah.
Because you see here, this sort of typical sort of perimeter fencing in front of the terracing, and that would happen. That would be in place in a lot of grounds, wouldn't it, Jez?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can remember one of my scariest times in the North Bank, and we were playing Man United, and it was so packed. I mean, I think the capacity of the crowd in that game was something like 47,000. Now, Highbury couldn't hold 47,000. But I remember my granddad telling me about games in the 30s at Highbury. They'd have 50,000. 50,000 people. And he said it was, I mean, my granddad was quite a big bloke, and he said it was horrendous. But case in point, the year of the Hillsborough disaster, when we went to Anfield, the iconic last game of the season, we were packed in like sardines. And it was a really muggy, warm May night. And there were people fainting and happened to get passed down to the St. John's ambulance people because you were like that.
No, I remember being in grounds like that as well. It was horrible.
Well, when Mickey Thomas scored the iconic winning goal, I mean, I was always one that tried to stand in front of the barriers, stanchions, like, you know, the things. But that was never always a good thing, because sometimes a surge would come and you'd be over it, and you can't breathe. You know, your solar plexus is like, oh God, you know, and it's not a pleasant experience. And you'd come out of a game like that, and your stomach would be killing you because you've been crushed. And that Anfield game, I mean, I remember that Mickey Thomas goal, and I went down about 6 bloody flights of terrace. You know, it wasn't pleasant sometimes.
No, it wasn't.
And then you had all the other crap that went with it, with all the hooligans and the fighting, and which was bloody rife at nearly every game. And you had to be well aware of yourself, because, you know, going to away games back then, it was a bloody scary experience. And even being at home could be a scary experience, because, as you said, the segregation was just not good enough.
No.
When you had some of the notorious away firms coming in, because there's always the things that the away firm wanted to take the home ends. So that was always a bit of a drama.
Because that was the culture, wasn't it? The opposition fans would go to, like, if they, you know, they were going away somewhere, that would be their objective, to come and take the home supporters.
Yeah.
Enclosure.
Is a trophy.
Exactly.
If they got in, and invariably a lot of some of these firms did, what the police, I think, in my book, it was the worst thing. They would form a barrier. They'd stick him in a corner.
Yeah.
And they'd put a barrier around him. If this is in the first half, yeah? Put a barrier around him. But rather than walk them out straight away, they'd stand there and let them stay there, because it was easier for the police to do that during the game. And so, of course, that then was causing more drama with the home fans, because by then the home firm, whoever they might have been, were there trying to, like, get to them to kick them out, if you like, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it made the whole thing a complete farce, really. It was just...
No, it was. And then, you know, you had the police there as well. I mean, one of the things I found quite scary about it was the bloody dogs, Jez.
Yeah, but you've got to remember one, wasn't it? In the 80s, the police weren't as organised as they were in the latter time. You didn't have CCTV. And the police presence was nothing near like you get nowadays.
No, it wasn't.
Where fans are segregated so much. I mean, all right, you don't get it so much nowadays. It still goes on somewhere in some places, but it was every single bloody game. It doesn't matter whether you're in the first division, second division, third division, fourth division. Every single game there was trouble, because it was the culture at the time. I mean, it started in the north, and no disrespect to the north. It was purely simple. Unemployment was rife. A lot of young people who had no jobs, didn't have a lot of money. Their release was a punch up on a match day. That's what. And they would travel. They would probably use their dole money that they had once a week to go away with their firm, whoever they were, for a kickoff. And that was their highlight of their week. They had nothing else. That was all they had.
Exactly. And these are what I meant by the dogs was the fact you'd be walking along the road and you'd be herded along the road by these police, and the bloody dogs looked like they hadn't been fed for a week or something, because they were like really looked aggressive. And,
they were. Yeah.
It was bloody terrifying. And then, you know, when we go to talk about Millwall, I've got a clip here of a guy. He was an undercover police officer at Millwall, and he's talking about the police there, and it'll sort of explain a bit better of what I'm going on about. But some of them, like, I always just got the feeling that they just enjoyed the confrontation and whatnot, you know. And for me, I know that they had to, like, search people and, you know, herd us in places and whatnot. And I do understand it, but I used to find it really annoying, Jez.
I don't know. I be honest, it never bothered me because it was basically done for your own safety.
Mm.
I mean, you remember the classic one where it was West Ham came to Highbury and that Arsenal fan got stabbed.
Yeah.
And died on the concourse because there was insufficient security to detect that guy with the knife.
Mm.
Now, that guy obviously went tooled up because his intent was, I mean, you know, the West Ham intercity firm were pretty notorious. Let's get it right.
Mm.
And you knew if you were going to West Ham, getting to the ground was always a drama, and you knew when they came to your ground, it was going to be a drama.
Mm.
They
No,
were a nasty crew.
Yeah. And then, you know, there was all the stuff about travelling. I don't know if you belong to the travel club, Jez, but
no, we used to make our own.
I used to belong to the Arsenal Travel Club, and they used to have these things called football specials, and they were like trains, and they tell you there were nothing special about those bloody trains. Like the windows, a lot of them were broken, doors didn't work properly, and the lighting was smashed up. Yeah. But I don't blame them, because if they hadn't have done it, the bloody fans would have smashed it all up for them. Do you know what I mean?
That's what used to happen.
Yeah.
I remember we were at, what ground was it? We were on the station, and this other firm's train come through, and they're throwing all the light bulbs at us. God. Out the window.
Bloody hell.
I think it was, I can't remember who it was now. Doesn't matter anyway. But they're unscrewing all the bleeding. Do you remember on the old tubes? The old tubes. Do you remember the old little handles on a spring thing? You remember?
Yeah, that's right.
We used to get all the Chelsea headhunters and all that lot. Used to unscrew them and use them to smack people over the head with.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
I mean,
no, it's shocking. It really was. And so here we've got this picture of what Jez and I were talking about a little while ago. Was the Bradford Stadium fire, and then we had the Hillsborough disaster, which was absolutely horrible. I mean, what do you remember about that Hillsborough thing, Jez?
Well, all I remember of that, I was at the game at Highbury, and it was the FA Cup semi-final, wasn't it? It was Liverpool Forest, and I think it was about half time. And there was people starting. People used to go to grounds with. Do you remember the old little transistor radios? You know, and rumours were going around about some big problem, and everybody thought it was fighting. Everybody thought fighting at Hillsborough, and you know, it's like, oh right, okay, and well, you know, it's Liverpool Forest, the two great teams at the time, and then it started rumours coming through just before the start of the second half that there'd be people getting crushed and the game had been abandoned and players had been taken off the pitch, and there's that's all you knew at the time, that something bad was happening up there. And then of course getting home after the match and seeing it all on the BBC, and you're thinking, Christ, you know, and you see the horrible pictures of people up against the ironwork, literally getting crushed to death. I remember the horror.
It was that picture we saw earlier with that perimeter fencing. There were people crushed up against that, and they couldn't get out. And I've heard stories about some of the people, and Bruce Grobbelaar, I think it was, saying that he could hear people screaming at him, Brucey, help us, they're killing us. Do you know what I mean? And God, that must have been awful for him as well.
He turned around, didn't he? He turned round. There's a classic picture of him turning round like that. Yeah. And there's this girl in her 20s, and she's like literally her face is like that.
Yeah.
Against the metalwork, and she can see she's like dying.
Yeah.
You can see every breath. She can't breathe.
Yeah.
And she's been crushed to death. And it was kids were there, little kids,
Yeah,
getting crushed to death. And then, I mean, I'll never forget that.
No, I won't. No, and that's why I get so upset when I see people disrespecting
Absolutely.
that thing. Do you know what I mean? It was horrible. And then we had this one, didn't we? The high school stadium
that was
in
Liverpool.
'85.
That was Liverpool. Yeah.
Sorry?
We basically UK English teams got banned from Europe, didn't they, for 4 years for that?
Yeah, and Liverpool had to do 1 year extra on top, didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, because basically what happened, there was the segregation again was really bad, if I remember rightly, and the Liverpool fans. But I've heard like lots of rumours down the years they weren't just Liverpool fans that were there. It was fans from other clubs as well. They went on a charged the Juventus fans, and they went over, and that wall that you can see there, I think it collapsed or something.
It did, yeah.
Under the weight of it, and loads of people. Well, yeah, it says on there 39 supporters got killed.
Well, that game, we had a lot of the notorious England crew fans.
Yeah.
That went there just looking for a fight. They weren't Liverpool fans. They were just the England hooligans. And that always fascinated me, right? You'd have like the notorious Leeds United service crew, Millwall Bushwhackers, the Red Army Man United, and other crews that would fight and kick the shit out of each other each week. Yet when they went to an England international, they're all friends.
Oh, it's bonkers, isn't it?
Because it was a united thing, England against the world.
Yeah.
It was such a shame, really, because you think, well, and it proved, really, didn't it? It did prove a point. That a lot of these people weren't really football fans. They were just out for a fight.
Exactly.
And the fact that you had genuine Liverpool fans there, and Liverpool, let's be right, Liverpool they weren't notorious in the time, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They weren't a notorious hooligan firm.
There wasn't. No, that's right.
Man United were. You had Sunderland were. You had Everton were a bit. They were a bit. Stoke City definitely were. Port Vale were. And
Middlesbrough were, Jez.
Middlesbrough, yeah, Middlesbrough. Aston Villa, the villains, they were a nightmare. Birmingham City, Portsmouth 247, the 247 crew. I say the Millwall Bushwhackers, Chelsea Headhunters, Red Army, Arsenal the Herd, and it's little forgotten. Arsenal's firm were an absolutely nightmare. You had the Herd, and you had the Gooner Elite, and that's an interesting point, Warren. Back in the day, you would never, ever, ever call yourself a Gooner unless you were one of the firm. If you called yourself a Gooner, if you were in a pub and said, oh, I'm a Gooner, and you weren't, you'd get a slap. And that's what makes me laugh now. Everybody calls himself a Gooner.
No, it annoys me as well, Jez, and I just call it out sometimes. Like, I think I'm in a bad mood, and then I see it, I will call it out, because I think, no, it's like, what are you doing? It's just, do you know what I mean? It's like,
they don't know what it means. They don't know what it means. I mean, even back in time, and I knew a lot of the guys that were in the firm, the Herd. I used to go. I didn't go to games with them, but sometimes you'd meet up with them, which was a bloody mistake. And you'd be in the same part of the ground as them. which not always the right experience you wanted to be in, to be fair.
Definitely not.
But once you got stuck in there by the police, you're stuffed. And it used to spoil the day, to be honest, because you're thinking, oh, Christ almighty, it's going to come on. And it was always did. And you're in with them. And, I mean, I never socialised with them. You know, you see them in a pub and you know who they were, and they'd say, all right, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. But they were proper fucking wrong uns, man. You know? Seriously, they'd always been in and out of Borstal or prison or whatever, always get arrested. And you're like, don't need this.
No, exactly. But listen, guys, please, can I just ask you to make sure that if you haven't subscribed to Jez's channel yet, that you go and do it, please. He does loads of stuff about Arsenal's history, and he also does lots of reviews and previews, and he has other fans come on his channel for chats about issues to do with football and Arsenal. He does quizzes and whatnot as well. And please make sure you put a like on the video that we're talking about, that we're doing at the minute. That'd be really great if you could do that. So I want to go through some different clubs, Jez, and talk about some experiences we may or may not have had with them. I mean, have you had many experiences with Chelsea's hooligans?
The headhunters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not looking for it. Unfortunately, back in the before Stamford Bridge was anything like it is today. Stamford Bridge was a shithole. Their home end was called the Shed, and it was basically a wooden, bit like Bradford City, really. It was a wooden stand, and Chelsea's ground basically it was almost like a running track round it. It was like an oval ground. It's a weird place, very run down. The fan base, the headhunters were very, very notorious. They'd leave a calling. They had calling cards. If you had a row of them, and you got done, they'd give you a calling card.
God.
Welcome.
I remember that.
Welcome or something by the headhunters or whatever like that. And they actually got eventually infiltrated by an undercover police officer, and a lot of them went to prison.
Then there was that TV show, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Donald McIntyre's undercover show, and that was horrific.
Yeah. And they were a wrong crew. I mean, they were notorious. It was never a great place. It's nothing like what the ground is now today. It was not a nice journey. It was not a nice experience, because you knew if Arsenal beat Chelsea at the Bridge, you knew everything was going to kick off. I remember one occasion being trying to think the tube station, on the tube, and they cut the power on the tracks because the Chelsea fans were coming from there from the platform opposite across the tracks, right, to fight. And there was fans stood in the middle of the tube line fighting.
Jesus Christ.
And they turned the power off. Stopped, and that's on the Circle line, I think, or the District.
Yeah.
And it stopped the whole of the Circle or District line, because fans were there kicking the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And it went on for quite a while, and the police came. I mean, the police could handle it. And that was I remember that one very distinctly. And because we actually were there waiting for our tube, and I remember this. We were trying to get back out, and the police wouldn't let us get back out. They were stood up in the concourse, and they had a cordon, and they wouldn't let you get out.
Jesus,
it was a recipe for disaster.
No, it was. It sounds an absolute nightmare.
They wouldn't let you out. You wanted to get out, yeah, into fresh air, and they would just stand there, and it's all kicking off down there, and you're thinking, what the hell's going on? And I mean, terrible policing back then. Terrible.
Exactly. It was shocking. I mean, I remember once being at Highbury in 1986, and we beat them 2-0. And I don't know why, but I sort of hung back at the end of the game. I don't know. I was just waiting for the crowd to disperse a bit or something. And this little fella came up to me, this greasy-haired fella with these two mates of his, and he started having a pop at me because back in the day, you used to have these hats that was like half Arsenal, half Rangers, or half Celtic, and I had half Arsenal, half Celtic one. And this fella, he had all these badges on his coat, like UVF, UDA, all this carry on. And he started having a go at me about the hat. And I just looked at him, and I just said, and he was a real little fella, and I just said, fuck off, mate, don't be such a prick. Like, something like that. Next thing you know, these coppers come down, like, the North Bank, and like, picked him up and these two mates and just bloody marched them off. And that was it. Never saw them again. But do you know what I mean, Jez? It's just like, I never, ever saw I reckon he was Chelsea because I'd never, ever seen him in the North Bank ever before or since.
Oh, they used to get in, didn't they? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Infiltration. I mean, nowadays, it's a totally different game. You know, totally match day. Yeah, you still get a bit of nonsense going. Of course you do.
Yeah.
But it was always, wasn't it, that if you were at home, the away crew were trying to take not only the home end, but take your local pub.
Yeah.
I remember once being a Cardiff City game with my cousin.
Right.
He was a devout Cardiff City fan all his life, and we were in this pub, and it was the home pub of the Soul Crew, the Cardiff City firm, and they were playing Millwall. And we were in there, and the Millwall bushwhackers were trying to get in. They were smashing windows, blah, blah, blah. And the police were outside. And there must have been 50 odd police. But the Millwall bushwhackers were going smashing cars up. They were smashing shop windows. And the police couldn't do a damn thing. All they stopped was the bushwhackers getting into the Soul Crew pub. They knew it would be an absolute bloodbath.
See, that bloody mob as well, Cardiff, years ago, I remember them. I went to see them play Maidstone United when Maidstone were in the 4th division, right? They came down and the Cardiff fans, they hijacked their own coach. Right, and then they set light to a petrol station, Jez. It's unbelievable. And then there was one fella, he was wrestling, a Cardiff fan, he was wrestling with a dog and bit its ear, and God knows it was just an absolute madness.
They were nutters, mate.
They were.
They're not like that now. I mean, when Cardiff City were at Ninian Park, their original grounds, the area around Ninian Park, it was not a particularly nice area. It was pretty run down. It was pretty not a nice place to live or be, if you like. And the whole area now has been regenerated, and it's. I've been to the new Cardiff ground. It's actually really nice ground. And like most modern grounds are, the clubs nowadays are smarting the game up because they had to, because basically when Maggie Thatcher was literally stamping authority, quite rightly so, on the football hooliganism, and the government invested millions upon millions, hundreds of millions and millions of pounds into CCTV at grounds, and it's got very army, not the army involved, but it got very army regulated. If you get, they would focus in on certain key members of certain firms and certain people that were known, and they'd all come out, because what they would do, they'd focus on the leaders, they'd oik them out, and quite often then the whole thing would go quiet. Because once, it's like an army, isn't it? Once you've lost your general, you don't know what to do.
It's cutting the head off the top of the snake, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, a lot of these people at the time that followed the drum were pretty thick shits. They were pretty thick. They've not lack of education. No fault to them, but it was their upbringing and where they came from, and they just wanted to be part of something. And it was the fact of, well, I can't get a job, or I can't do this. I'll become one of the crew. And if they were, if you're a big bloke, working as a labourer, let's say on a building site, fair play, respect. Your release at a weekend was to go to a game, home or away, and have a punch up, get pissed, because drugs then weren't really like they are now. They were around, but you didn't have ecstasy and cocaine, and I mean, most people couldn't afford heroin. They'd be on the old weed, fair enough, but weed was nothing like it was today. And they'd go to a game and have a kick-off, and that was their weekend. Job done.
Because there was always, as well, this culture, wasn't there? It wasn't just football. It would happen Saturday night in the most high streets. Fellas fighting with each other, one pub against another pub, one area against another area, and so on and so forth. Do you know what I mean? And it was part of a larger societal problem, Jez, wasn't it?
Well, and that's what we've got now, gang warfare. It wasn't so much gang warfare back then. I agree. You might have 10 lads from this estate would fight 10 lads from that estate. But they weren't tooled up with knives and bleeding guns.
No, exactly. Different. That was what was different about it.
It was fisticuffs. You knock someone down, give them a kick in, and walk away. But nowadays, it's a totally different concept. It's guns and knives and bloody machetes and God knows what else.
So we spoke earlier about West Ham and that incident where the poor fella got stabbed and whatnot, Jez. But have you ever had any other incidents with West Ham fans?
Have I?
Yeah.
Oh Christ, yes. Going to the old Upton Park was a notorious. Oh, it was awful. Walking to get into the. I mean, have you ever been? Did you ever go to Upton Park?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I went there once.
It's not an easy place to get to.
No, it's not.
Walking through that East End, mate, and the East End. I mean, the majority of the East End people are fabulous, fabulous, fabulous people. But there's a certain section that weren't. And I remember, I remember once being in a complete prat. There's 4 of us, and we were going away to West Ham. Had just been promoted back from. They won the FA Cup. They beat us, and they got promoted back up into Div 1, and we were away to them, and we pitched up, and a mate of mine, he thought he's Billy Big Boots. He said, yeah, come on, we're a bit early for the game. Let's go in this pub. We're all right here, he said. We're all right. We're nowhere near. anything to do with the home fans. I said, yeah, all right. So we walked in. Now, we didn't have any scarves. We didn't have any shirts because you just didn't do that in them days. You never went away. You just went incognito, yeah?
Mm.
So we walked this pub, notorious, typical East London pub, walked in. 4 unknown faces of the area, and there's about 40 fucking West Ham fans there.
Oh, God.
So what do? You either turn tail and walk out, or you man it up.
Mm.
So my mate Rory, being the prick he was, said, "Come on, let's get to the bar." So we're going through, and they knew we weren't West Ham. They knew, and we're like, "Oh, fuck me." Anyway, get to the bar, and this lady behind the bar says, "Yes, lads." We went. I said, "Well, I'll have a pint of bitter and the other lager." And we're like, "Yeah." We try to have a conversation to make we're okay. We're all right. And I remember this bloke coming over, bloody great big black bloke, and he come over and said, "How are you boys going to do today against the Hammers?"
Oh, no.
And I went, all right. And my mate Rory went, "What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean at what? What, Arsenal?" He went, "Yeah. How are you going to do against the Hammers today?" He went, he was bottling it.
Mm.
And this fucking bloke leant over to him. He said, "You lie to me." He said, "Pick a window." He said,
Jesus.
"You are Arsenal. I'm asking you a sensible question. How are you going to do against the Hammers today?" And he went, "I think it'll be a draw." And this guy went, "Fair enough. Finish your drinks and F off." And I was like, "Oh."
Fucking hell. Bloody hell. It sounds like you got away with one there, Jez, just about.
Yeah, lucky.
Because I remember, the only time I went to Upton Park was the game when Liam Brady scored against us. And it was his first game back in England after being in Italy. And after the game, it was absolute carnage. There was it was just an absolute pandemonium. And like you say, it's not an easy place to get to, is it?
No. I won't lie. I never really enjoyed it, to be honest.
No, I didn't enjoy it either because it just took too long. Because it's not that far from where I live. It's should only take about an hour, but it took nearly 2.5 hours to get back from there. And I just thought, this is ridiculous.
The problem was, Warren, it is you always had in the back of your head, this could go tits up at any minute. Any time it could go. You've only got to do the wrong thing, the wrong turn, and you're in shit.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
We got lucky that day. We walked into that pub, and we were probably. It was a back street, middle of nowhere pub. It wasn't a well-known West Ham pub at all. And we walked in, and there was 40 of them in there, at least, maybe more. I don't know.
Mm.
As soon as we walked in that doors, typical East London pub, doors on the corner of the pub. Yeah, you remember, the old curved doors. Went straight in there, and it went, boom. And it was either walk out. And the problem is, if we'd walked out, they'd have been straight off after us, chasing us down the road.
Yeah, no, exactly.
When you're in unknown territory, you don't know where you're running. You don't know where, and you could run into God knows what, who, where, whatever. So the only thing we could do is face it out, which we did, and thankful.
There as well, it's not. It's one of those areas where it's just like the whole bloody community comes out, isn't it?
Well, it's a rabbit warren. It's all little alleys and little bloody streets, and I mean, the worst place is Millwall. That.
Oh God, yeah. I'm going to talk about them in a minute. But yeah, that was horrific. I mean, I remember being as well at Highbury in a game against Nottingham Forest, and I think it was the last home game before the 1980 Cup final. And I'm pretty sure I can remember I was standing right down the front, near the front with my dad, and I remember hearing this chant of "We're Forever Blowing Bubbles" come up from the middle of the North Bank.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it was my memory playing tricks on me, but I'm pretty sure I remember it.
Well, there was the classic, wasn't there, where I mean, West Ham were Div 2. We had them in the cup final.
Yeah.
And that the ICF came up and were outside the clock end. And a lot of them got in there, and some got through into the concourse on the North Bank and were kicking off, but the police kicked them out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other lot were down in the clock end, and it was going absolutely mental down there. Quite a few stewards actually got injured in that.
Jesus. Yeah, that sounds really bad. It really does, because I've seen a few things happen at Highbury. Do you know what I mean? Mostly when we've been playing Tottenham. But and I remember Crystal Palace, I think, tried to come in the North Bank one time, and it kicked off, and they got booted back out again. And like you described earlier, the police just surrounded them, I think probably for their own bloody protection. But yeah, it's bonkers.
Palace were a naughty lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a mate of mine who was a Brighton fan. Well, now, I didn't know him then. He said, you know, when Palace came to Brighton, they would just smash anything up.
Yeah, because there's a big, massive rivalry between Palace and Brighton, isn't there?
They'd walk them down from Brighton Station down to the Palace Pier, along the seafront, up Dyke Road, and then along to the old Goldston. And that's about 3 mile walk, something like that. But again, back in those days, you'd have about 4,500 Palace come down, and they'd just go mental because there just wasn't the police organisation. I remember my first game when Brighton first got promoted to Div 1. We went down and we had to do the same thing, walk from the station down to the Palace Pier, along the front, up Dyke Road, along to the Goldston. And there was, I don't know how many Arsenal fans were there. There was fucking thousands. Lot got locked out. And you had the at the Goldston, the home end was the North Stand. I think it's called the North Stand. And you had a corner terrace, and then you had a big long all the way up to the halfway line, which was the away section. And throughout the whole game, there was just nothing but fighting. Even though they had 2 big fences between the North Stand and the away. There was a lot of police, but there was bottles being thrown and all kinds of shit. And the herd who were there, the herd then were led by a guy called Hendon Josh and Sheepskin Steve. And they were like, I remember looking down, I was up quite high here. And then you have the corner terrace, and they're down there, they're doing this, to try and get more Arsenal down to join in the fighting. and it was like, I remember getting out of the grounds, and we then had to walk 3 miles back down Dyke Road, along the front, back up. And Arsenal, I think, won that game 4-0. That was Brighton's first game in Division 1.
I remember that. I wasn't there, Jez, but I remember it. That game was their first game in the first division, and we went down there and we absolutely destroyed them, didn't we?
Stapleton, Sunderland, Ricks, and can't remember the other one.
Yeah, so right, I thought we could have a chat about Millwall now. Yeah. So there was that infamous game at Highbury in the FA Cup when we beat them 2-0, and it was just absolute pandemonium, mate. I mean, that day I was in the East Stand lower tier. I don't know why I was over there, why I wasn't in the North Bank, but I was. And half time I had enough of it, and I just went home. I just couldn't bear it any longer. But I'm going to play something for you, Jez, to because I thought you'd find it interesting. So I've got a little video clip here. So I'm just going to play that. And it's an undercover copper who infiltrated, but his job, he infiltrated one of Millwall's hooligan gangs. And this is him talking about that game.
As a Millwall supporter in the Arsenal North Bank, which is their home end.
How did you end up in there?
Because with the guy from the pub and 15 of the biggest fuckers I've ever seen, never seen them before. And they went, come with us. So I went with them, and so did the sergeant. And the sergeant bowled out. He went and left. So I was on the terraces with these 15 men and me, and thinking, this is only going to end fucking one way. And they could tell I was nervous, I suppose, in the politest way of putting it. You know, it's 15 top blokes, me, surrounded by 8,000 Arsenal. And then they start singing No One Likes Us in the middle of the Arsenal North Bank. And I'm like, singing No One Likes Us, and in my head I'm going to fucking die here. And the thing about football is it had that eerie silence before everything fucking goes horribly wrong. So it just went completely silent, like completely fucking silent. And everyone moved out. And the first geezer stepped forward and started coming towards me because I was the smallest. And the guy who was next to me, as he came towards me, steps in front of me and just went, and just hit this geezer fucking squarely on the nose, and he just went bosh. Straight did almost did a fucking complete flip in the air, and then just landed on his head on the concrete terrace. And everyone, all the Millwall boys, everyone just went, ooh. I mean, he fucking proper clouted. And then it was like the crowd opened up and these two little guys scuttled out and grabbed him and dragged him back, and then the thing closed, and then he just kicked the fuck off. Proper.
What was their method in that? Was that their plan, to go in their way and just cause it?
Of course, in the Arsenal way, and look what we can do. We're in here and we've infiltrated you. And then it was fucking fight for your life to get to the pitch, which is what I did. Just windmills. And last thing you do in that scenario is go fucking down. You go down, you're fucked. You have to do whatever you can to stay on your feet.
Did you get respect from the Millwall balls after that?
I got onto the pitch and got arrested. And back then I've said this in the past, there were two sorts of police officers that policed football. There was what I used to call the cake eaters, which are the big fat lazy fuckers who drive a desk in the week and work football on Saturdays for the overtime. And then there was the tactical support group, who were more affectionately known as the thick and stupid group, who just want to have a fucking fight. So they get shields and batons and fucking helmets and want to charge at people and hit things. So that's your mix of football. You got the thick and stupid group and the cake eater. And I got the cake eater. And instead of taking me behind the goal and down the tunnel, which is what he should have done this way, he went the wrong way and walked towards 10,000 Millwall. And his grip just lessened and lessened as we got closer and closer to the mill. We were going fucking mental. As we got led across, it all kicked off in the seats above me. This guy called Ginger Bob was up there, and it all fucking went off. And he basically let go of me, and I just ran, dodged the cut with old Bill, and dived in the crowd, and that was it. So from then on, I was always known as the guy that fucking led the charge at fucking Arsenal and dived in.
So, Jez, what did you think about that, mate?
I don't actually know about it myself. Don't know. I'm not disbelieving it. I'll say that I'm not disbelieving it. But the one thing I will agree with him on, the tactical support group police were just a bunch of thugs. I had an occasion with them at Hull City. It was an FA Cup game. We'd gone up there, and it's not a nice place to go on a match day because there's no parking. So we parked away, and we were walking, and at every street corner there's a crew of some shit. Some of these are just kids, 11 or 12, right? And they're throwing darts. They're throwing fucking bottles full of piss, and it was like, wow. And we were there on our way, and I'll be honest, there's about 14 of us, and we were being a bit stupid. I won't lie, giving it the big one, and the TSG turned up, had us up against the wall, hands behind the back, legs apart, search, and they were like making out that we were part of an organised firm, and we're going, no, we're not. We're just like defending ourselves because they're having a go at us. We're not anything to do with anybody. We're just football fans. We don't want anything to do with this. And I remember, I'm not a big guy, right? This guy, helmet on, he had his baton right up against and he was like breaking my back. My face is in the wall like that, right? Arms behind my back, and he's got his baton, shield thing, right in my back, legs apart. So I'm in a stress position, yeah. So I'm bent like that, and it hurt like buggery. And so you're like, and I'm like, I'm not here, mate, for fighting. I'm here when I'm going, like that. And eventually they just like let us go, and then we got to the ground, got searched, We'd already been searched anyway, and it was like, I remember saying to my friends, I don't want to do this no more. I said, I've had enough of this. It's drama every sodding week. It's just drama. When you got little kids, 11, 12, throwing darts at you.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, it's only got to hit you in the eye.
This is the conclusion I came to in the end, Jez, because of this, like the policing and all the rest of it. And I just thought, I don't need this drama. Some point, something's going to go horribly wrong, and I'm either going to get really badly injured, or I'm going to end up getting arrested or something and like sent down. I thought, I really don't want this, and I ended up walking away from it, Jez.
Well, I must admit, I've said this many times with Kenny, Lee. I used to love away days. It was always an adventure. It's fun. But it got to the point where sometimes you're like, I just can't be asked for this. Traveling, and you always knew back in those days there's going to be something happen, and so you're always on your alert because you never knew what was going to come around the corner.
Exactly.
And you're thinking, I'm walking to the game. You know, I'm walking to the game, and it's a pretty innocuous game, nothing big, you know, and all of a sudden you walk in and you'd see it all going off on a back street, and you think, oh, here we go again. Bricks are being thrown, this, that, and the other, and you know, I mean, I've told you many, many, many times. December the 23rd, 77, away at Tottenham. We beat 5-0, coming home. It was absolute some of the worst violence, Tottenham Arsenal violence I've ever seen in my life. Walking down the White Hart Lane, out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere, this brick comes over. Thankfully, it hits the guy in front of me on his shoulder, straight in my mouth here. Still got the scar. Right across there. Lost two teeth, and totally ruined my Christmas.
No, I bet it did. Bloody hell.
Couldn't eat nothing because it's like my face was out here, black eye, all that. And I didn't ask for any of that.
No.
We played the game and just going home. I mean, that was some of the worst I've ever seen, Tottenham Arsenal. It was just relentless. It was just bottles, bricks, bits of wood, Christ knows what else. And it wasn't just them, it was us as well. Even it's some as well, to be fair. But the trouble is, back in them days, the policing was so bad. There were just never enough police. There was not enough segregation. And nowadays, you know, you go to a Tottenham Arsenal game, you walk down one side of the street, they walk down the other. And you never mix. You got the horses, the dogs, the police, guard, you know, and all that. So it's nothing like it was. I mean, I know it still goes on, but they used to be running battles. It would go on for 1-2 hours.
The thing is, as well, in those days, Jez, when you went to a match, you had to be constantly on a high state of alert, didn't you?
Yeah, make one wrong turn, mate, and you're fucked.
Yeah. You know, because I'm going to tell a story in a minute about Sheffield Wednesday. And if I hadn't had my wits about me, I'm pretty convinced that me and my mates would have got a right good kicking that day. But, you know, I remember, like, Millwall, the first time I went down there, I got summoned by my grand's best mate. She called me in because she was from the area, and she said to me, I hear you're thinking about going to see Arsenal play at Millwall. And she goes, you think you need to know how dangerous that is. And then she was telling me about how back in the day, between the wars, the First World War and the Second World War, that the women would be throwing boiling hot water out the windows as the opposition fans were walking down the street and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, and that was between the wars. It wasn't like at the height of the hooligan thing, because there was she was saying to me that when she was a kid, there was always trouble down there at Millwall matches and whatnot.
Well, it was a very run-down area. Bermondsey, all around there, New Cross Gate, New Cross. It's, you know, you've got to remember, especially after the war. I can remember I was an apprentice, and I used to travel to the Old Kent Road, to the apprentice training college. I can still remember going up on the train, and you still had, back then, I'm talking 77, 78, you still had bombed out factories from the war. And this is like then. And it was a very run down area, very poor area. And a lot of the people that lived in that vicinity worked at the docks. So they were tough people. The women were tough. They had a tough life in what they had to support a family with. The husband was notoriously a bit of a drinker, and I'm not saying everyone was, but you know, back in those days around there, wherever there was a crossroads, there was 4 pubs. Every corner was a pub. And it was a tough life there. So these people were brought up to be fighters to survive. I don't mean, you know, that all of them went to football and had a fight, but you had a lot of underground stuff, bare knuckle boxing, all that sort of stuff went on that caper. So it was a notoriously hard area, and that a lot of that carried on into football.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I mean, I went to Millwall twice, and I mean, you remember the old den. The entrance was like a bloody front door. For the
I remember that. I remember that. It was horrific, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you're all trying to funnel through a bloody front door.
Yeah.
And all around you, you've got the Millwall lot out there, giving it all a big one. And yeah, I mean, you know, when you were there, you had the bushwhackers, you had the halfway liners, the ICC, the intercity crew. So I mean, they were absolutely annoying. I mean, it was always the case. Millwall Leeds, when you had the Leeds service crew and Millwall, that was always a war, and it was the same with West Ham. Always, and I mean, Millwall would fight anyone. I mean, Tottenham, that was always a kick-off. It was just the way they were.
Yeah, it was certainly challenging going down there, that's for sure. But yeah, so I'm going to quickly tell my story about Sheffield Wednesday. It was from the quarter-final League Cup match in '88, and we won 1-0. I think Nigel Winterburn got the goal. And before we got up there quite early, we hired out a car, and there was, like I say, there was about 4 of us, and we decided to try and go and find. We parked up and then tried to go and find the ground. We found the ground and we thought, right, let's go and find a chippy or something to get some lunch. And we found one. We had our food, and then we were walking down the road, and this fella come up to us, and he goes, "I tell you what, guys, see up there?" And he pointed up the road. There's like a dark alley. So you go down there, and you'll be able to get into a pub and some nice cheap beer and pint and whatnot. And a couple of my mates were going, yeah, that sounds great. I was going, don't even think about it. I said, it's a fix-up. We go down there in that dark alley and we're going to get absolutely battered. Do you know what I mean? So I managed to persuade them not to go because I just thought it was a real warning. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you had to be careful.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember we went to Blackpool. I mean, I'm sorry, I hate Blackpool. I think it's an absolute shithole. And no, I'm lying. It wasn't. It was Port Vale. And we pitched up, never been there before. And the Port Vale's grounds is actually in quite a nice area. It's not, you know, it's not a run-down shithole. They're actually nice houses. Anyway, we pitched up, got out, and we got there, I don't know, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock kickoff. We're mooching about, and we're just walking around, and we're thinking, well, what should we do? Get something to eat, whatever, you know. And we're walking down this road, and this lady, probably in her 60s at the time, went, "Oh, hi, wonder if you could tell us somewhere we could get something to eat. You know, just be nice and everything." And she went, "Oh, yeah, if you go down this road and do a right, whatever, you'll find a pie and chip shop, fish shop, all that sort of shit." I went, "All right, fine, thanks very much." So I said, "We got to go down here, down there." And she said, "Yeah, you'll be fine." Okay. We get down there. Now, whether she deliberately stitched us up, I don't know. It was about 200 Port Vale fans.
Oh, God.
And we like, I think we better turn around here. And my mate Rory, again, no, we'll be all right. I said, "Rory, as soon as they hear us, we're not from here, they're going to know who we are. Do you honestly think we're going to get out of here with a pie and chips? I said, we get a pie and chips, mate, it's going to be shoved up our ass. And he was like, yeah, no, yeah. But I said, look, mate, there's about 200 of them. They're all milling about. Yeah. I said, we have got no, let's get out of here. Get out of here, get out of it.
Mm.
He said, well, I'm a bit hungry. I said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll all give you 2-3 quid. You go to that chip shop, you get us our grub, and we'll meet you around the corner. So I said, I am not going down there.
No, you sound wise, Jez.
Well, maybe you're right. Maybe, I mean, he wasn't the brightest button. Let's get it right. I mean, you know, Warren, when you go away to Midlands, north of England, they know where you're from.
Mm.
Unless you've got a very good ability to disguise your voice to the area where you're going, right? Even though you've got no shirt, scarves, anything on, they've only got to hear you, and they know.
Mm.
And then you're in the shit.
And then as well, they could even tell by the way you were dressed as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and you know, I've got the Tottenham one up there, but is there anything particular you want to say about them, Jez?
Bunch of wankers, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, you know, I've only ever been there twice and seen us win twice, but yeah, nothing really much to say about it, really. I never had any issues. I just was walking down the road after the League Cup semi-final replay, singing my head off. I don't know how I managed to get away with it, but I did. But then the big one for me is this one, Middlesbrough.
Middlesbrough, yeah.
My neighbours were from Middlesbrough, and I went with them to the FA Cup third round. Was it fourth round or third round in 1984 when we lost 3-2 up there? And that day I was stood in the home end. I must have been off my rocker, Jez. They took me in a pub. I think it was called the Yellow Rose. It was near Ayresome Park, and it's a notorious Middlesbrough pub. And we went in, and before we went in the pub, they said to me, Warren, whatever you do, try not to say too much.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah, I thought, oh, God, here we go. So we got in the pub, and the guy who, you know, one of the neighbours, I was there with 3 of them. There was a fella, his girlfriend, and the girlfriend's sister. So he said to one of them, can you ask Warren what he wants to drink? I thought, thanks, mate. So he asked me the question, so I answered him, and this lovely, there was this massive fella, and he said, oh yeah, there's a cockney behind me, something like that. And I thought, here we go, it's going to kick off now. And he turned around, absolutely lovely fella, and he said to me, listen, mate, he said, stay here with us, you'll be fine, we'll look after you. He said, but whatever you do, do not go down that end of that pub. They will absolutely rip you to pieces. So I stood there with him and these people I was there with, and I didn't go down the other end of the pub. But, mate, honestly, it was one of the most terrifying experiences I've had. Right? Because I was only, 17, something like that. And I thought I was going to get absolutely battered.
But it's a horrible experience. It's like that fella who infiltrated the Millwall thing. You're in a situation, and it's like a situation where everything is in slow motion. Because as he quite rightly said, you're there. Everything goes quiet, and you're waiting for the next thing to happen. And it's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. And it's like you know, whenever you've been in a car crash, it takes forever, but you know it's going to happen, and you all of a sudden hear that horrible noise of crunching metal, but it seems to take forever for it to happen. And it's no different in that situation where you're in like nowhere land. No, it's like a different universe. You're suddenly thinking, oh fuck, what's going to happen now? I'm either going to get a good slap or nothing's going to happen. And you're like, oh my God. And it's the most awful, awful feeling that, oh, what's going to happen now? And that is, I think, one of the most scariest things. Getting a slap is not nice. It hurts. That's for sure. But it's the anticipation, I think, is even worse. Because you really don't know what's going to happen.
Because everything just slows down. It's just like it goes into slow motion, doesn't it? I'm sure it doesn't in reality, but that's what it feels like.
I mean, I think it's because your brain, whatever's being released into your brain, I can't remember the name of it now. Suddenly, everything goes distant, and it's like, but it's not. It's seconds. It's like that. It seems like forever, and your brain is going like in overload. It's like, oh gee, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then it's either you're going to get a smack or you're not. And I think that's the worst of the worst. And I've always said that's the most scary thing, is that you're in a situation where you're faced up in a problem that you don't know what's going to come out of it. You know, I mean, I told you one of the worst times for me was when we went to Hull. Every corner, you just didn't know what was around that corner. And it was either you keep going or you walk away. And I've always said, the minute you walk away, you're in a worse situation. You walk away and they're going to follow you. And the more that follow you, the worse it's going to be. If you at least try and front it, then you got half a chance.
Yeah, because they might back down. But that they are a bloody handful, that Middlesbrough lot. I mean, I've been there twice, Jez, and each time it's been fucking mad dramas every time. It really has.
I understood the problem. I don't know. There is a problem. I don't know. And I don't know what it is. I know you've asked me what it is. There's a problem between Arsenal and Middlesbrough. I don't know.
I think it must go back to like the 30s or like really early.
Maybe, I don't know. I've no knowledge.
I don't either. I'd like to know what it is, but I've got a feeling it goes back years and years and years and years. It must do.
I did look this up. When I first started doing my channel, and I started it with the formation of Arsenal when it was Dial Square, Middlesbrough, I mean, they're 10 years older foundation than Arsenal. And Arsenal were not a professional club, and nor Middlesbrough. And they did play on a few occasions at their various respective grounds at the time. Arsenal were at the Manor and Manor Ground, and they were wherever they were. But they weren't a big draw. They weren't big draw clubs then. And I thought, well, maybe there is something here. But I've never, ever, ever found anything in the hundreds, well, not hundreds, but the lots and lots and lots of books I've got on Arsenal. I've got hundreds of hours of research online, which I'm hoping I'm not going to lose. This computer's fucked down here. But I don't know what it is, mate.
I've looked into it as well, Jez, and I can't find anything out. The only thing I could think of was that it must have been like a cup match or something like that, and something really dodgy must have happened, and we beat them or something with some really dodgy decision, and it really rankled them, either that or we relegated them or something like that. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, I've looked into all of. We never got them relegated because we actually weren't really. We were only ever once in the same league back then. It was a non-professional league, so I don't know about that. I mean, we had a worse time with Nottingham Forest, when there was actually one of the first noticeable football violence in the crowd at the Manor Ground, when the Nottingham Forest team had to be escorted out of the ground. Because
back in the day, there was a massive problem with Arsenal fans, wasn't there? Like when we were in Woolwich.
Oh, God.
We got points. I think we got points deducted, and we got threatened to be kicked out. And
I mean, you got to remember that fan base at the Woolwich Arsenal, the Armoury. They were a rough crew. I mean, they were a tough bunch. You know, I mean, there was, I mean, round the Manor Ground as was back in Plumstead at the time. It was a rough area. A lot of the pubs that are now obviously not there anymore, were notorious for knuckle boxing, all that sort of stuff going on illegally. Pubs getting raided, all kinds of prostitution, all kinds of shit going down.
Because as well, a lot of their supporters came from the armaments factory as well, didn't they?
They were a tough bunch.
Yeah.
Didn't earn big money, worked very long hours, especially during World War One. That's what affected Arsenal big time financially, because the fans were working. They were luckily offered overtime money. So they actually didn't go to the games, and that affected Arsenal financially, to the point that Arsenal very nearly went bust, which I've talked about in one of my history shows.
Yeah, I
and it
remember
wasn't
that.
until a couple of dodgy dealers, dare I put it, came in and bought or invested in Arsenal, that they actually survived, because Arsenal were in deep shit.
Exactly. So, Jez, is there anything you want to say more about Middlesbrough, or shall I move on?
No, I don't. I know nothing more to say about them, mate.
Right. Okay. So there's one thing on here that I want to talk. I've spoken about the Cardiff thing. I used to now and again go and watch Maidstone, because it was down the road from where I live. And the games with Gillingham were always an absolute nightmare. There was always loads of fighting and stuff. But there was one game in particular that was really bad. It was against Kettering in the second round of the FA Cup. And I remember standing, because like then Maidstone used to play their games at Dartford's ground, and the home end would run along the side of the pitch. It wasn't behind one of the goals. The main home end was like on the side of the pitch, and there was a fence between the home supporters and the away enclosure. Anyway, so this particular day, we were standing there, and like the police used to have this box that was above one of the little terracing bits behind the goal. And I could see all these fellas, there were like about 10 fellas just walking beneath the police thing and like coming around the corner. And I thought, it's a bit fucking weird. What's going on here? And next thing you know, these blokes, they came in. I'd never seen them before. And then all of a sudden I heard this crack. And one of them had smacked this kid, and you see something come out of his mouth, and it was a tooth or something. And then next thing you know, where I was stood, there was all these old fellas, like they were in about 70s or 80s, and a group of young kids, probably about 14 or 15. And there was this fella stood in front of me, and his eyes were all glazed. He had his hands in his pockets, and he was screaming at me, going, "Come on in," like this, right? So I just stood there and stared him down. And then the next thing, I don't know what happened. He just must have got fed up with it. Him and all his mates just like wandered off. And then the police turned up when they disappeared. These people from Kettering had disappeared. And then when the police came, I just went ballistic at the police, started shouting at them. I was saying that you just left these people. They got attacked. One fella's had a tooth knocked out. These kids were terrified. And the next thing I knew, one of this bloke I knew was a rugby player for Maidstone Rugby Club. He just lifted me up off the ground and pulled me off and walked down the terrace with me and goes, "Warren, shut your mouth. You're going to end up getting nicked." Like this. And because I would have done, because I was so angry, Jez. Do you know what I mean? But after that, I had this reputation for being a nutter, because I just faced down these hooligans, you know. But I didn't feel like I had any choice, because if I'd gone off, I would have left this guy with the ability to attack these little kids and these old fellas. And I just thought, well, I ain't doing that. You know?
No, well, I mean, I got a 3 month ban from Highbury once. I very, very, very rarely ever went in the clock end, and I was in there and I got hit on the head with a bloody plastic bottle. So I was like, it didn't hurt that bad. And I was like, what the fuck? So I picked it up and I threw it back at the away fans. Next thing, 2 stewards out, kicked me out, got my season ticket. I was banned for 3 months. I said, I didn't do anything. Yeah, you threw a bottle. I said, well, it hit me first. No, we've got all that. We'll have a look at that on CCTV. And I thought, how fucking fair is that? You know what I mean? I got a 3 month ban. And I was like, all right, it's a plastic bottle, for fuck's sake, you know. And I just threw it back like that. I wouldn't, like, I just threw it in the air. I got caught, I got seen, and I got a 3 month ban. I was like, fuck's sake. Really? Thank you. I was just going to say, I just want to say this, Warren. You got a chap here in the channel, bless him. I don't know if he's a young lad. Henry Ray Barker channel.
Yeah, I know about him. I'll speak to you about that another time, Jez.
I think he's getting a bit of abuse here and whatever.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'll deal with it. I know that fella. Yeah, don't worry about him, Jez. Just ignore him. Yeah, I'll talk when we finish the stream. I'll tell you about it. But
I'm gonna have to say, well, I'm gonna have to wrap it up in about 10 minutes. I've got to go on TJ Warren's at 9 o'clock.
No, that's okay, mate. We're nearly coming to an end now. I was just gonna ask you if you'd had any instance like watching any England games or anything like that.
Mate, I'll be honest. International football, I've only ever in my life been to 2 England games. I find it boring as fuck, to be honest. I went to see England at, this is about 78, 9. I went to watch England against Denmark. It was 0-0. Boring. And I've been to watch England in a friendly. I think it was against Holland. Can't remember. It doesn't do anything for me.
No, I can understand that. And I went with a couple of mates. One was a Spurs fan, one's a Norwich fan, and we went out to Germany in 1988. And oh, Jesus, I wish I'd never bothered. It was horrible, Jez. Honestly, it was like a National Front convention.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
There's loads of Chelsea there, and it was honestly, mate, it was horrible. We had to, the things we had to do to stay out of trouble was just ridiculous, because we'd stayed in Frankfurt and we had to, when England were playing their games in Frankfurt, we had to go right sort of in a remote part of the city just to make sure that we kept away from any of the fans, because we knew that there was going to be loads of trouble. So it was absolute nightmare, Jez. Honestly, really, really awful.
I'll tell you one occasion. I went to it was UEFA Cup game. It was Ajax Arsenal in Amsterdam.
God, biggest
mistake. I've not been to many away European Cup games. Oh my days! We went there, and you had all the orange. Fuck. We went into this bar. The hotel we were staying at was a cheap little hotel, but it was okay. People were nice, and we said, any nice bars around we can go in. It was on the outskirts of it wasn't in the centre. Any nice bars we can go to and have a drink? Yeah, go to this one here, blah blah. I know the owner, you'll be fine. God almighty. We walked in there and it's all orange. And we're like, oh my God. And they all turn round, all of them, every single bugger in one of them, pointed at us. And we're like, oh, here we go. And then I'm thinking, we're done. We are seriously all coming over. And I'm like, oh, fucking hell. And they went, Arsenal. And we went, obviously, like this, like we're going to get thrown in the canal, you know. And they went, this one guy, he's a big lump he was. He went, my favourite England team, you drink with us.
Like, oh, that's the result.
It's like, oh my God. Like, it's like, it was that white moment again, you know. Yeah. Oh my God, we're going to get thrown in the canal. He was massive, this bloke. He must have been about 6'8". Blonde-haired bloke, huge. And he went, Arsenal, my favourite England team. You drink with us. And I was like, okay, thank fuck.
No, because they at one point they had a really bad reputation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The Dutch. They were a real handful.
They were nice guys, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, mate. Listen, Jez, I'm gonna stop it now. Just so that you can get off and get to TJ. Before you go, I just want to get you to shout out your channel for me, Jez, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Arsenal history and more. I'd like to do more content, but at the moment, there's nothing to talk about because I'm one of these people. I don't see the point in keep talking about transfers because everybody in the world does it, and it gets boring. And I know people get the because you start losing the subs because you're not putting the content out. But I don't like to rinse and repeat. If something new comes up, it's interesting. That's fine. I'll do it. But currently, I'm just going on channels. I'll be on yours today, Warren. Thank you very much, mate. Always a pleasure. I'm on TJ's American Idiot Show in a bit. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm on with Matt, the Southern Gooner.
Are you there?
Are you there? Are you? Oh, cool, man. Cool. And then I'm looking forward to getting back to doing proper football stuff when the season starts. Back on with everybody. I think we've all noticed lot of people aren't doing anything because it's nothing to talk about.
Mm.
You
So
know?
I'm thinking about doing some other things, like off-key stuff, like the history and talking, like maybe doing some chats with people and whatnot. Like, because like you say, there's nothing to talk about really, except for this cronky madness that I've got myself wrapped into. But I'm not going to do it all the time. I'm just going to do it slowly, Jez, because otherwise it will consume me and I'll just like it will do my head in.
But yeah, that's the thing. You've got to be careful doing this shit because you know it can take over your life, and you know, I mean, it is nice in the summer to have a bit of time out. I mean, that's why Lee. I'm surprised he's doing the stuff he's doing because he said he was going to take some time out, but he's still doing nearly 3 shows a day. I know they're recorded, they're not live, but respect, he's still got to do it. And
yeah, exactly.
Unless you are actually a YouTube person, it takes time, it takes effort, and it's time out your day, and you have to balance it because it can affect other members of your family. You're going to get the ump and say, for fuck's sake, you have a break. You know, and then you go into your video analytics and you're like, well, I've dropped 3 subs in a day. And you think, well, why have I dropped? Because do people say, well, you're not doing anything, I'm going to unsubscribe? I don't know how it works.
No, I don't.
YouTube,
mate.
Well, YouTube's a mysterious beast.
It's certainly, I picked up 2 today, Jez. Do you know what I mean? And like
they play so unfair. They really do. Like
I just don't get it. I don't. It just doesn't make any sense to me, to be quite frank.
Well, the thing is, they've got everything in their hand because they will. Twice they've struck me for my intro, and I delete the video, and then 2 days later I do exactly the same intro, and nothing happens. And you think, well, what's that about? And the thing is, their appeal process is shit because it can take up to 6 weeks. Well, by the time you've appealed and they then remonetize and upload your video, nobody's going to watch it.
I know, because it's date sensitive, isn't it? Most of the stuff that we do.
Yeah, it is. Most people watch it within the first five days, and after that.
Jez, I'm going to finish it here because I just want something I need to have a chat with you about. So, thanks everyone for watching. Before you go, please make sure you put a like on the video. Make sure as well you go and subscribe to Jez's channel and watch his videos and put likes on his videos. Really, really grateful if you could do that. Jez, thanks ever so much for helping me do this tonight. I've really enjoyed it, mate. It was good.
I've loved it.
Talking to you.
Warren, it's about time you came back on my channel, man. It's been way too long.
Yeah, I'll just message me and I'll be happy to do it anytime you want.
All right, mate. We'll sort something next week, yeah?
All right, mate. I'm going to end it now. So thanks, everyone. Take care. Speak to you soon. Bye for now.
Take care.
Is it finished?